Ratko Mladic, the former commander of the Bosnian Serb army, has told the UN War Crimes Tribunal the charges against him are obnoxious. Mladic is making his first appearance before the tribunal on charges of genocide, murder, and other atrocities committed between 1992 and 1995. After the charges were read out to him in court, Mladic said, quote, "I have not heard these monstrous words before." The 69-year-old's lawyer argued Mladic wasn't well enough to stand trial. The authorities disagreed, saying he was lively and joking before he was transferred to the Netherlands. Among other things, Mladic is accused of orchestrating the 1995 Srebrenica massacre and siege of Sarajevo.
You, Ratko Mladic, are charged with genocide, crimes against humanity, and violations of the laws and customs of war under several modes of liability, including joint criminal enterprise.
Well, let's bring in CNN's Atika Schubert, who's following the process for us. And first of all, I guess, Atika, describe for us the process at this point and what we've been seeing this morning at The Hague.
Well, basically, what's supposed to happen today and what has happened is Mladic basically has the charges read out to him, and he's supposed to enter a plea. But Mladic, as you heard earlier, has said, that these charges were obnoxious, these are monstrous words, and said that he would need more than a month to respond. So clearly, he's trying to delay the plea process. However, the judge has said he has scheduled another hearing for July 4th. So the process is going ahead, but Mladic does seem to be delaying it as much as he can.
How did he appear?
Well, this was one of the big issues, was going to be, is he really so frail that he cannot stand trial? This is what his lawyer had argued, that he was gravely ill. But when we saw him in court, he seemed fine. He seemed to understand everything that was said to him. And of course, the authorities said he was, in fact, joking during his transfer. So he seems fine. We'll have to see what the defense says going forward. All
right, Atika, stand by. Let's go now to Mark Ellis of the International Bar Association, who joins us in the studio. Mark has been working as an advisor to various bodies regarding crimes committed during the wars in the Balkans. Mark, thank you very much for being with us. So we understand now that Mr. Mladic has delayed entering a plea. What does that mean in terms of legal terms, and what happens now in that process?
Well, in legal terms, under the ICTYs, under the court statute, he'll have 30 days to inform the court whether he's going to plead guilty or not guilty to each of those 11 counts. If he does not provide a position to the court will automatically indicate that he is pleading not guilty. So he'll have these 30 days to make that determination, but if at the end of those 30 days the court will, in essence, say that he will be pleading not guilty. So he can do what he wants, but the court proceedings will continue as scheduled.
The interesting, I guess, legal and defense position is there is a discussion now between the responsibility, I guess, command responsibility versus direct responsibility. Give us a little bit of an idea what that actually means.
Yeah, it's a very good point, because you've heard Mladic suggest earlier when he was in Serbia before he was transferred to The Hague that he didn't know that these crimes were being committed. And so indicting him under this concept of command responsibility is very important. Command responsibility essentially says, if you as an individual are in a position of authority and your subordinates commit these crimes, and that you knew or should have known, I emphasize should have known, that these crimes were being committed, and you did nothing to stop them, then you can be held personally liable, criminally liable for those acts. And so it really does narrow the argument, or the defense, if you will, by Mladic to suggest that he just didn't know that these things were happening. Command responsibility says, yes, but you should have known, and therefore we're going to hold you responsible for those crimes.
Does that make it easier then for the prosecution to prove that case?
Well, it's certainly the prosecution still has to set out its case. There's parameters that they're going to have to follow legally. But yes, this is in some ways a kind of a catch-all. It's in essence a criminal principle that avoids allowing a defendant to say, well, it's blind ignorance, that I just didn't know. My soldiers were doing these things and I didn't know. This particular principle says, yes, but you should have known. You're in the position, in this case a general, conducting these military activities, and you should have known that your soldiers were committing these crimes. And if you did nothing to stop them, did nothing to bring them to bear responsibility, then you personally will be held responsible. So yes, it is a potent I think, process for the prosecutor to use, and that's going to be very important.
Is there a possibility, and if it does indeed happen, what happens if Mr. Mladic refuses to enter a plea in 30 days?
Well, again, if he refuses to enter a plea, then the court will enter the plea for him, and it will be not guilty. And then, of course, the next step is, will he represent himself? Will he accept defense attorneys? Will he accept those? And that is going to be another major issue for this court. Because if Mladic decides to, within the next 30 days, to say that he's going to represent himself, that places the court in a challenging situation, as we have seen in the past with high-profile defendants. So this is going to be an interesting period of time to determine exactly what Mladic is going to do as to this case.
Mark, thank you so much. Mark Ellis here in London.